Well, good morning, everyone. Whew, I'm just going to shake out my jitters. Yeah, there's a lot of you. I am used to working in small groups and not such big ones. Even though I was a teacher for a long time, it's been a while since I've been in front of a pretty large group. So thank you for being patient with me as I slow down the process and do what I tell people to do when they work with me. Take a breath. Find my feet. And if I was sitting, I would find the back of the chair and feel the support, knowing that I always have support. And then I'd come into my breath. And remember that I can stand or sit and feel into finding my aliveness. And when I can't find it, welcome the part of me that needs to be seen and heard and given just enough space so that the other part can be found. Thank you for doing it with me. You know, I'm going to speak from stories today, but I first want to just introduce you a little bit to what somatic attachment and trauma-informed care really looks like. So the word somatic comes from the Greek word soma, and most of us think that that means the body, but actually it means our living wholeness. That means it's all of us. And it includes the body. It includes sensation. It includes posture, gesture, movement. It includes all of our essence. And especially it includes how we live inside this container, this body. So I marry that with a look at attachment theory and how our early attachment theorists would talk about the connection between mama and the baby, or the primary caretaker and the baby, because that's where attachment begins. And as we begin to form that attachment, we also form patterns. Patterns that often live with us through our entire lifespan. Most of the time, those patterns are unconscious and we're not really paying attention to it. Those patterns really develop kind of habits that show up in our relationships, also in our relationships with ourselves, with a relationship with how we eat, with our jobs. It also shows up in our defense patterns because certainly how I connect to you is also how I defend against you. And so, we're going to see all of those pieces of living inside a relationship begin right at birth. And so I'm going to talk about how marrying those two together, really forming a lens, a somatic lens, that includes awareness of our early patterns, and then what happens when those patterns get imprinted and stuck and we have trouble releasing them. So that's really my work. I mean, I might be a teacher, I might be a supervisor, I might be a coach or a counselor, but ultimately for me it's all about that relationship, which is part of what drew me to come here, is that I know the heart of addiction is the wound of attachment. And without really understanding our human relationship with ourself, with our God, with each other, with the planet, without understanding that, we're going to lose a lot in helping somebody who has attached themselves to a substance or a behavior because it wasn't safe enough to be in a human relationship. There wasn't safety, and so they looked elsewhere. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. You know, in our modern world, we're at a crossroads. The fast pace of consumerism and the pull of technology and the growing disconnection from the natural world has taken a toll on our relationships, both with each other and with the planet as well. When we prioritize efficiency over presence, we start to dissociate, not just from our bodies, but from the natural rhythms that would have connected us to wisdom and the natural wisdom. This affects how we feel, how we relate, and ultimately how we connect. Francis Weller talks about the grief that we carry, the ungrieved loss that comes from being separated from community and meaningful ritual. It's not just an emotional loss, it's a somatic one too. When the body feels heavy, constricted, empty, of course we often ignore that, don't we? We see this play out in how people are yearning for a deeper connection and often reaching for a cell phone or a podcast or a drink or sleep. Often, folks don't know where to begin. Gabor Mate points out that attachment wounds are becoming more apparent and much, much more common between partners, between parent and child. And, you know, unfortunately, there's so many challenges that families face trying to juggle staying in connection, particularly with technology, robbing them of very real, alive connection. The more we rely on technology for this interaction, the more we risk losing the deep, live connections that keep us grounded and whole. We're also seeing the effects of the disconnection in the broader world, as I'm sure you all know. People are becoming polarized, stuck in their own beliefs and isolating themselves from others who think differently. Social media, the news, the constant noise of conflict. It makes it hard to find real, secure connections, and our relationships are suffering as a result. Whether it's between partners, parents and children, or even with ourselves, and certainly with ourselves in spirit. Many of us get left feeling we don't know how to find solid ground. It's not just our minds that get stuck in patterns of beliefs and disconnection. Our bodies hold on to these dynamics as well. Our bodies carry the stories of our lives, as does my back, which was broken 4 times. So it carries it. In our gestures, in our postures, in our movement. Our bodies tell our story. From the time we're born, we start embedding these patterns that lead to attachment wounds in our tissues, in our nervous system, in our very form and shape. Stanley Kellerman, who was an early somatic pioneer of somatic psychology, taught about how the body shapes our experience, creating a language of form that speaks in and of itself. How we stand, how we breathe, how we move is all a reflection of what's happening inside us. When we're caught in relational defenses with power structures, it's more than a psychological experience. It's something we feel deeply in our bodies. We just might not be paying attention. You might notice tension in your shoulders or shallow breathing, or you just might ignore it. Your body absorbs the rigidity of the outside world, and it tries to cope, and it uses all kinds of strategies, and those strategies are really necessary when we have to survive, particularly if we don't have choices or we don't live with the amount of privilege that many of us have. Those strategies become ways of surviving. Over time, this disconnection from the body's natural wisdom can lead to a constant state of this kind of survival, where we're either on high alert, constantly scanning the environment for threat, or we kind of are checked out, or we people please, so nobody knows what's happening inside. Peter Levine has done incredible work around showing us about trauma, how it has lived in the body, and how we can befriend it, learn to be with it. As I say, my job is not to dispel that darkness. My job is to be with it and help you be okay in it. Because darkness comes every night. Trauma arrives in the reaction, not the event. And so what I hope to do is to come alongside and build a connection, a relationship, so the darkness isn't so scary, so we can be present with it. That's where the healing is. It's not in the strategies, the behavior strategies, or how smart we are, or how hard we practice over and over again to stop being anxious. What if it was just okay to feel anxious and shake my arms and admit it, you know? That would make it much easier. So I invite permission for people to be in their bodies, be with their emotions, be present with. Francis Weller speaks of grief as a deep, unspoken sorrow that we carry in our bodies, a grief that stems from our disconnection from community, from nature, and meaningful relationships. This grief is not only emotional, but it is also somatic. The body holds on to it, creating sensations of heaviness or emptiness. Unresolved grief can weigh down the body, limiting our capacity to feel alive and to feel connected. The body is always speaking to us through sensation, through tension, through aliveness, through pain. It communicates our unprocessed emotions and our unmet needs. Developing an awareness of these sensations is key to understanding how we relate to ourselves and to others. This process of tuning into the body's signals is central to many spiritual traditions as well. Buddhism and Taoism, for example, teach the importance of mindfulness and body awareness in cultivating presence and connection. In these traditions, the body is seen not as something to be mastered or ignored, but as a vital part of our spiritual and relational experience. Through practices like mindfulness meditation in Buddhism or Taoist movement practices, we learn to listen to the subtle language of the body, the sensations that arise the breath, and the flow of energy. And we develop an attunement to the present moment. Similarly, somatic awareness plays a vital role in forming and maintaining secure attachment. Our ability to be present with others and ourselves begins with our capacity to be present in our bodies with ourselves. And for me, to be present with the mystery, however I language that. Our body's form and our body's movement are part of how we communicate, not just with ourselves, but the world around us. When we are attuned to our own internal landscape, we can establish more authentic and secure connections with others. Grief, sensation, and somatic awareness are deeply intertwined. The body speaks to us through the language of sensation, and learning to hear and interpret that language is essential for developing a healthy relationship with ourselves and others. When we connect to the body's wisdom, we not only heal old wounds, but also we create the capacity to form deeper, more rich, more secure attachment with those around us. Whether through grief work, somatic practice, or mindful awareness, we learn that true connection starts within. Understanding how attachment is somatically imprinted across the lifespan is key to healing. These imprints affect all aspects of life, from our relationships to our goals, even to our eating patterns, as I have worked with lots of those with eating disorders. Yet, as I've seen over the years, many emerging psychotherapists lack an understanding of somatic theory. Most graduate programs within psychology neglect to include somatic, they just don't. They really don't have somatic perspectives. I was going to say theory, but they don't even have a somatic perspective in graduate schools, at least not in the United States. They also don't understand how that imprints in human development. Instead, what we really see is much more reliance on top-down behavioral strategies and behavioral interventions that completely miss the mark for long-term healing. If you're working really hard to change your behavior and you keep trying to do the same thing, it's like learning an instrument. You keep practicing the same behavior. Well, okay, your behavior might change. It might. But that doesn't mean anything's happening inside. And the real healing needs to happen inside. And there needs to be some kind of integration between how the body holds our beliefs, our emotions, and our sensations, and then how we connect to another, how we connect to spirit, and how we connect to the aliveness in ourselves. True healing in the realm of attachment requires a somatic approach, one that identifies ruptures and emotional complexity and goes beyond these behavioral strategies. It's about creating the space for safe or safe enough connection and the embodiment of love and presence. In my work, I invite clients to explore potent exercises with their body that foster embodied insight, helping them to build bridges to their deepest longings and to the mystery of divine presence, to welcome in the feeling of sensations and emotions giving permission for the defenses to be present, protecting us however they show up, and building a capacity to be with discomfort. These become my priority. Slowing down the story so that we can show up for the body and all those messy emotions. Being present with. Since my near-death experience, I have worked with individuals on the edge of death and those living with trauma and dysfunction. I've walked with people through their dying. I've been there for those who are grieving, those with unresolved grief and families grappling with loss. My work with suicidal teenagers, desperate to escape a world devoid of safe connection. All of this has shown me that profound healing comes through somatic integration. Trauma resolution and attachment healing have been my specialties. This work emerges from my own journey through healing early developmental trauma. My personal journey is a story from moments of insecurity through seasons of depression to a near-death experience that awakened me to a renewed sense of purpose. What I discovered on the other side of death was a miraculous experience of love, light, and connection, more vibrant than anything I'd ever felt in life. In that realm, I was embraced by a sense of belonging, a secure connection to the universal source of life, to God my Father. This connection brings me to the heart of my message today. To live fully, we must live embodied. To love deeply, we must connect, not only with others, but also with our bodies, our very essence, and our communities, and spirit, and the cosmos. Like so many, I had to confront the fear of falling apart. I was afraid of losing control, afraid of what might happen if I allowed myself to break down and feel those emotions. Would I be able to make sense of it? Would my partner leave? I realized that what I really needed was the safety to fall apart, the safety to have big emotions. When someone is truly present with us, really hears us, it allows emotions to settle, to be shared, to move through us, to be present whether they leave or not. I didn't need others to fix me, but I did need someone to bear witness, to bear witness, to bear witness. For some clients, safety has never been a part of their experience. In those cases, I invite them to explore less danger. Instead of aiming directly at safety, by helping them connect with even a little less fear, we begin the journey towards secure connection. This expands their capacity to take something in, even if all they can do is just take in a little. less fear. Instead of asking them to take in a little safety, because that can be way too intimidating. My goal is to awaken a connection to a sense of love, a connection to their body, to sensations, to rest, to their own resilience that they don't even know that they have. Because they're alive, they have resilience. Because they're standing in front of me, they have it. But they may not be connected to it. Over time, this allows them to find other ways to ease daily tension and move from survival to an embodied living. In awakening, we become aware of where we are, who we are, and what we feel. This feeling sense, this attunement to aliveness, is found in relationships. Many clients come to me wanting to stop feeling connected to discomfort. They're not even thinking about wanting to be connected to something positive, really. They want to stop feeling that discomfort that they're feeling. They don't just need guidance and somebody to tell them what to do. They need the support of someone to bear witness and to help them bear witness to themselves inside a safe or a safe enough connection. Creating enough safety, just enough, to explore their own inner world of sensations and all those messy emotions, helping them to tolerate all of this so that we can build bridges to connection and belonging. Rather than assuming the connection is there simply because I'm the coach or the counselor and they need it. So that we could begin to build bridges to connection in that presence. I'd like to share a story with you, a case story from my work with a family. They know I'm here, they know I'm sharing it. I've changed the names. But it's a precious story about a 10-year-old boy, who I will call Matthew, and his father, Jay. Then when I'm done sharing that story, I'm going to walk you through mine, because I think it really highlights and speaks to the beauty of awakening to love and connection. Now, this story about Matthew and Jay, it's a story about finding each other, building bridges across time, across realms, and across the fears of loss. When we risk jumping into the void of the unknown, we can discover the amazing gifts of love and connection. Now, 10-year-old Matthew came to me with night terrors that really looked a lot more like seizures or hallucinations. He would wake up in a trance, believing he was lost in another world and he couldn't find his parents. His eyes would be open and he would be frantic, and his parents were right there and they could talk to him and he could hear them, but he could not find them. Eyes open, frantic, throwing things, walking around trying to find things, totally in a trance state. So when the family came to me, I said, "Ooh, have you been to a doctor? Can we rule out seizures and let's see," right? When they walked into the room as a family, I realized, Jay has Parkinson's, late stage. Matthew was sleeping with mommy and daddy. Jay has trouble in the night, being present in reality. And so I thought, the first thing we need to do is take care of nighttime. So I said to the mom, who is Peruvian, I said, "Mom, do you know how to clear the house? Because we need to clear the house of any kind of energies that might be impacting nighttime. And so they took care of that. And then I talked to Matthew about night school. So night school is what happens at night when our bodies sleep. You know, our spirits go to night school, a lot like Harry Potter. You have to just imagine all that Harry Potter learned in that other place. Well, the problem is you're in both places at the same time, and we can't have that. We have to figure out how to have your body stay here in bed so that you can go off to night school and learn all kinds of things. So we tried all kinds of things. Tied a thread around the wrist, put a stone under the pillow to help anchor the body a little bit more here while he went to night school. Then when I worked with him, we also worked in the sand tray. A sand tray is something that I use. It's a fairly good sized tray of sand. And then I have miniatures, a 12-foot wall from floor to ceiling with little miniatures. And I would invite Matthew to find the figures that needed to come to the world of the tray. And I would say, well, tell me a story. And in our work together, we would just work with all the things he was learning in night school. The things about being frightened, that he couldn't find his mommy and daddy, that he couldn't find help, that he needed protectors. And so we would build protectors in the sand. Meanwhile, I knew I needed to work with Daddy. Jay came for weekly sessions. He was a doctor, a humanitarian clown, someone who worked with Patch Adams, if you know who that is. They were very close friends. And so he was a man that understood dying. And as he neared death, he was terrified. So over 1.5 years, I saw him every week. The family would bring him, and he would lay down on my table, and his body looked a little like this. Okay. In fact, I don't even think I can do it, actually. It was so gnarled, very constricted. I would get help to get him on my table, and he would lay down, and I would put pillows to support him, and put a hand on his shoulder and a hand on his knee, and then just really wait for things to settle. And then I would take him on a guided journey. We would go down to the sea and find a boat. We'd go into the boat, and I would have Jay find a place where he could rest his body against the back of Wolf, and Wolf would protect him. And then we would wait for Eagle to come. And I would say, all right, Eagle's here. Let's climb on the back of Eagle. Feel your feet around Eagle's belly, and take your hands and find the bony part of the wings up near the neck of Eagle. And bury your head right in the neck of Eagle, and then wait for me. I've got your back. And I'd get on the back of Eagle, and I'd say, hold on, because he's going to lift up. And up we would go, and we would fly towards the western ridge where the sky meets the sea. We would look down in the boat and see the man leaning against the wolf, rocking in the boat safely. We would fly and see his house and see his family and his friends and where his practice was. And we would look towards the horizon where the sky meets the sea. And hence we would practice. And then it would be time to come back. And sometimes Eagle will have a hard landing, and he would feel it. During those journeys, I would watch his body. It would just open up. His hands would unnarl, his feet would uncoil, his legs would relax, his face that was so constricted would begin to relax. Every muscle would relax. And then the tears could come. And he could say, "Oh, Mama, I'm so scared." And I would say, "And I'm right here. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. I'm right here with you. Can you feel me?" "Yes, Mama. Yes, Mama." And then I would say, "It isn't time yet, Jay. Time is coming soon, but it isn't time yet. Trust, it's all right." We did that every week for about 1.5 years. As Jay deteriorated, he began to lose his speech. And during that time, we used music to be playful with each other. He would come in and have a hard time walking, and I would say, "Oh, have you forgotten how to clown? You have the best sense of balance of anyone I know. You've just forgotten it. Come on now." I'd get up next to him and I'd say, "Come on now, move those hips. Where's that clown? Come on, Jay." And we would teeter-totter over to my table. And then we'd have our journey, then we'd sit and we would talk and we would use music. So he would start singing "It's a Hard Day's Night" if he had had a hard night from the Beatles. He might look at me and start singing "I've Got You, Babe, I've Got You, Babe" from Sonny and Cher. And that was how we began to communicate, because he couldn't find the words. He would get so frustrated because he couldn't find a word, and I'd say, "Give me a song." One day he couldn't find a song, and I said, "Oh, I got it. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And can you do it backwards? Docious, aliexpialisticfragicalirupus." Of course. And then he would just explode in laughter. Huge laughter. Laughter heals us so much, especially when we're scared or we're sad. Meanwhile, Matthew was having his sand journeys with me. And one day in the sand, he created 2 worlds. A world that he said was the heavenly world, and a big river, and another world that had a house scene. And I looked at the world and I said, "Oh, what do you think?" And he said, "There's no bridge." And I said, "Oh, what should we do?" He thought and he said, "Is it time for a bridge?" I said, "I don't know." So he went and he got a bridge and he put a bridge in. I said, "Who will cross the bridge?" And he started to cry. He said, "I don't know. I feel so alone." And I said, "Well, who do you need to be in this world with you?" And he said, "Oh, I know. I need Wolf." And so he went and he found Wolf and he put Wolf in there. And then he said, "Miss Catherine, I don't know who's going to cross that bridge." And I said, "Can we be with I don't know? Can we just be with I don't know together? You and Wolf and me and the trees and the house and the water and the guides and guardians in the other world?" And he said, "Yes." Finally, Jay had to be moved to a facility. And since that was an hour and a half away, I still went every week to see him. At this point, he wasn't really communicating much. He would smile. That was about it when I visited. Matthew came to me about that time. I guess it was maybe several weeks before Jay died. Matthew said, "I want to go on the journey that you take Daddy on." And I said, "Oh, that would be great." So we did the journey. We went to the boat, we got on the back of Eagle, and we looked for a world between the worlds, a place of meeting, a place where we could find one another if somebody went to that other world. He said he was ready to cross that bridge and find the world between the worlds. He said, "Come on, Miss Catherine, it's time." I said, "Okay, I'm ready." We got to that world between the worlds, and he said, "Well, there's 2 peach trees, just like at home, and there's a great big hammock. That's for Daddy. And if Daddy falls, we'll put pillows underneath the hammock." I said, "Great, perfect. What else do we need?" He said, "Oh, we need a well, because Daddy might get thirsty, and I might get thirsty when I come and see him." I said, "Okay, let's have a well." He said, "We have to have a garden with beautiful flowers and vegetables." I said, "Yes. What else do we need?" "We need a path off into the distance so that we can meet other people who are over there." I said, "Okay, that sounds good to me." So we practiced that a while. And just before, I guess it was maybe a week, 10 days before Jay died, I invited Matthew to come to the facility and sit with us, and so that we could take that journey together. Jay was in the hospital bed, and I had a hand on Jay, and Matthew was in a recliner chair here, and I had my hand there. I sat between them, and I led us on that journey. And when we got to the world between the worlds, it was wonderful. Jay hadn't moved. And Matthew said, "Daddy's thirsty. I think I'll go to the well and get him a drink." And I looked, and Jay went just like he was reaching for water. And then he gulped, and I said, "Oh, I think Daddy likes the water." And then after a while, Jay got agitated. And I said to Matthew, "I think it might be time to go. Daddy's kind of agitated." He said, "Oh, that's just Eagle. It's a hard landing. I know all about hard landings. That happens after night school." He popped up, ran around the bed, came over here, and cocooned his daddy's face in his hands, taking his hand and going like this to his forehead. And he said, "Oh, Daddy, I'm here. It's just a hard landing from Eagle. You're going to be all right. And now we can find each other. We know how to find each other in the world between the worlds." In Jay's final days, I held vigil, supporting him and his family. And when he passed, I was there with his sister, his wife, and her best friend from Peru. I said to the women, "Let's not call hospice yet. We are the women. Let us wash the body. Let us prepare him." And that we did. We washed him, we dressed him in his clown outfit. We filled his pockets with precious things. And then we sang him home. It was the most profound, sacred passing that I've ever witnessed. 2 years later, Matthew still comes to see me occasionally. Recently, he said, "Oh, Miss Catherine, on the playground, I have a little group of friends. We go on the journey and we go see all of our grandparents and those that we know in that place, the world between the worlds. We go and we visit them." I said, "You do? On the playground? Are the teachers okay with that?" He said, "Well, one teacher joined us." I said, "Really? Wow." He said, "And guess what? At home, I don't even have to go on the back of Eagle. I can just be there with Daddy." I was like, "That's pretty cool." He said, "But sometimes I still have, bad nightmares." And I said, "Oh, Matthew, you see, in that other world, there are rules, just like there are rules in this one. In this one, when you go to school, sometimes there are bullies, right? And you have to know how to take care of yourself when there's a bully." He said, "Oh, yes, I know how to do that." And I said, "Well, in the other world, we need protectors too. And so why don't we create a circle where you can feel protected in night school?" He said, "Oh, I would like that." And I said, "Okay, each corner, right? We have an east, we have a west, we have a north, we have a south. Let's find somebody who could hold those spots for us." So he said, "Well, Daddy, of course." I said, "Yes, Daddy will hold one. And Grandpa." "Oh, Grandpa's over there too. Great. Who else would you like to hold a protector place?" He said, "Well, I've been talking to this lady named Amy." And I said, "Amy? Who's Amy?" He said, "Oh, she's a really old lady like you." I said, "Oh, she's a grandma." He said, "Yeah, probably. We have great conversations." And I said, "Well, maybe Amy can hold a spot." And I said, "So we have one left." He goes, "I don't think I know anybody over there besides those three." And I said, "Well, what about from your stories? Somebody that's an important character." He said, "Zeus." "Zeus is very brave. He is the Lord of Thunder." I said, "Wow, okay. It'll be Zeus then. Then who's going to hold the earth plane and who's going to hold the above?" He said, "Well, Jesus, of course, is going to hold the above." I said, "Great, we got Jesus here. Who's going to hold the earth?" He said, "How about an animal?" I said, "Great. Who?" He said, "I don't know." He was real quiet. And I said, "Why don't you ask Daddy tonight?" And then he came back a week later and he said, beaming, "Oh, Miss Catherine, guess what? Daddy gave me a golden retriever named Bo." I thought, wonderful. So Bo will hold that spot. He said, "Yes, but guess what? Mommy started crying when I told her because that was Daddy's dog when he was young. He never would have known, so that came right from Spirit." And I said, "That's wonderful." He goes, "Oh no, it's not just wonderful. It's real, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, but there are a lot of people who won't believe you." Knows how to find someone. He knows how to find himself. He knows how to be in the dark, how to be at night. He's also carrying the message that Spirit is alive, that we can find each other if only we build bridges and hold the faith of a child. I'd like to just pause a moment to give honor to Jay. So let's just have a moment of silence. I'd like to share my story. Well, my story kind of begins at birth. I had failure to thrive, which means I almost died. So from the beginning, the imprint in me was to try to survive. I was selectively mute as a child, preferring to talk with the animals, the trees, the angels, and God. Much preferred that over people. I grew up in a family where my father's an Episcopal priest to a large church, and everyone always wanted to touch me, and I didn't like that, so I would hide behind my mom's skirts. I struggled with learning. Reading was hard, and math was a foreign language. My imagination, though, was alive with story, with my aliveness in my art and in my dance. Those are the places that called me home. As a child, I was very empathic, which meant I really felt into all of the mystery around me. I could see a man with sandy-colored hair and blue eyes walking with a female wolf in front of him all the time, right off in the distance as I walked to school. And as I got older, whenever there was trouble or I was afraid, that image of a man and the female wolf would arise, always there, protecting me. I come from a deeply religious family. My father, my brother, my two cousins are all Episcopal priests. And in my late teens, we lived in a religious community in the inner city of Houston, Texas. It was very poor, mostly Latino and Black in that area. And there was about 1,200 people that came in from the outside to live among this community and to center our lives around music, dance, and the ritual of worship. It filled our lives with story, with song, and with prayers for healing. It was miraculous. I mean, truly, truly big miracles would happen and people would flock there in order to have healing. This was the 1970s, a time of spiritual renewal in the churches in the U.S. People were coming alive with connection to spirit. We did street theater, dance, we told stories, lots of music. And for me, there was a comfort in some of that because my mother wrote radio theater when she was young, and she intuitively knew that this shy daughter of hers needed support to come out of her shyness. And she got me involved in theater and in dance when I was 13. And that helped me put on a role. It allowed me to step into a role, and that made it easier for me to be social. I went on to college and majored in art, education, and dance. By the time I was a young woman, I really struggled with depression and fitting in. I had visions and insights that others had a hard time understanding. Once I had a dream that my minister was having an affair and that he was being confronted by a church elder. I called him the next day and said, "I've had a dream I'd like to share with you. Will you please come and see me?" He did, and I told him the dream. I said, "You were standing in front of the fireplace like this. This is what you said. This is what he said. It's just a dream, but I'm just wondering what's happening in your life." He went white. He got angry. "How dare you? How did you know?" And these kinds of experiences would happen. I led a worship team. This is, I'm trying to think of when this was. I must have been 25, maybe, something like that. And the laying on of hands, I would see things and begin to pray. And people would get angry because I would see things they didn't want me to see. And I'd pray for healing about things they didn't really want anyone to know needed to be healed. And so there was this disconnect. It did not bring me into relationship. It divided me instead. And so I pulled away, ended up more depressed, more isolated. I really just wanted to go home. Really wanted to go home. Home for me was in that spirit world. I was born on Samhain. Samhain is the time when the veil is the thinnest between the worlds. My birthday was yesterday, actually. So I am one of two worlds, a foot in spirit and a foot in matter. And I just wanted to go back to spirit. Years of traumatic experiences compounded my struggles. In a world that expected me to be a good wife and submissive, I felt trapped. One day, I stood on a bridge and I hesitated. I thought, what if I survive? That would be worse. So dissociation became my escape. I withdrew from my body, existing in two worlds, the numb physical and the alive spiritual, and they did not interact. Then came the car accident. I was riding with my son, John, and I knew we were going to hit the deer. I could see it coming. And in that moment, after everything collapsed into me, in that moment, I felt myself leave my body, not of my own accord. So there was permission. It was spectacular. There was bright light. There was a sense of connection like nothing I had ever had. No sounds, no voices, nothing in the material world to see, just bright light. And sensation is a body experience. Yet there was this, I don't know how to describe it, sensation of being connected, of being home, of being welcomed, of being not alone, of this incredible presence. And I thought, oh, I am home. I don't want to leave. This is wonderful. And there was that sense, my dear, you can stay. You can stay. I'm like, finally, I basked in that a while. And then I knew I had a choice. I could go back. Did I want to? My Heavenly Father has always been a strong connection to me because my earthly father is very, very precious, very safe, someone that I know loves me very, very much. But he was busy taking care of everybody in the church. So he wasn't always able to take care of me. And I projected that onto my Heavenly Father. He's very busy taking care of everybody. And so I thought, would he take care of me if I left? And in that moment of connection, I knew I'd be okay either way. And so I chose to come back. And in really being willing to choose to live rather than wanting to die, something shifted. It gave me a purpose, a sense of purpose. And so there I was, all of a sudden, back in the car. Now my son John, sitting next to me, teenager, was completely unaware of what had just happened. He grew up to be a very fine doctor, actually, and he knows the difference between scientific facts and illusions. And he said, "You lived, Mom. You did not die. You lived. There's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "Oh, there's something so right with me. I died and chose to live." So even if it was only a matter of moments in earthly life, I know what I experienced. After the accident, I went back to school to get a second master's degree, this time in counseling, thinking, I will take care of everybody else like my dad. I will serve. And so I poured myself into helping everybody else. I worked 83 hours a week. I worked really hard, nonstop, 12-hour days, in crisis care, of course. But despite my work, I rarely took care of myself. That was sort of modeled, you know. I longed for love and connection, but I didn't know how to slow down. I didn't know how to take in life or to connect to an embodied experience of being alive. I chose to live, but I chose to live because I was going to serve. I didn't really know what it meant to live, other than to live in service. Eventually, I turned to somatic practices, hoping to find a way back into the body. I took somatic experiencing training, which taught me how to be more present and support my clients better. But even with this newfound awareness, I struggled to feel deeply connected to myself. While my professional practice flourished, my marriage was failing, lacking intimacy, and although I was alive and thriving in my work with others, my inside spaces felt dead and empty. It wasn't until I began to work with someone who could help me unravel the core wounds that I realized how disconnected from myself I really was. I had touched God in the realm of bliss during that near-death experience. Yet on earth, I was merely existing in my body. My work brought me joy, but my personal life was empty. I lacked close friends, and those that I had were really far away. During this process of healing, I set the intention to cultivate deeper friendships and connections. Oh, I have met several precious people who were and are present with me. Over time, these deep connections just deepened further. And for the first time, I began to feel intimacy and a shared vulnerability and presence. Through these friendships, I began to feel a welling up inside of me, a longing, a wanting, not just for love, but for life itself, for aliveness. One day it struck me. I had returned to Earth 20 years earlier, but I had never really chosen to live. I had been serving others, not living in my body. Now I longed for embodiment, for a real flesh and blood connection with life, with love, and really with belonging. I showed up in my close relationships, feeling into my longing, and in one particular friendship, I found the surprise moment of coming alive. I connected to that special sensation of love and connection. Then I discovered that I could even be rejected. and still stand in my enoughness. In that realization, when that arrived, I could be with my full self, with my story, my shadow, ugly parts, and my vulnerable beauty. Something burst open, and I knew I wanted to feel all of the feelings of being alive in my humanness. That the feelings wouldn't overwhelm me, and if they did and I died, I'd just return to bliss. So it was fine. This revelation awakened in me so much joy and so much love and acceptance of myself as being enough. It's called being human. And I'm okay with that. My service to others still leads me forward, and my centered self reminds me to come home to self. It has awakened a deeper connection to love. Now the bliss is present with me all the time. I'd like to share a poem that I wrote along my journey. It was quite a while ago, but I think, well, I just want to share it with you. It's called, What Do I Want? It's called What Do I Want? Because I had this dream that in the dream, my friend asked me, what do you want? And I said, this is what I want. Now, I will tell you, from the place I'm standing now, while I've learned that wanting and longing and having are very different experiences, it begins with wanting. What do I want, you ask? I want to be seen, heard, touched. I want to be wanted. I want to be met directly. I want to be in a relationship where it's safe to be real, to be myself. I want to be raw, naked, vulnerable, fierce, direct, opinionated. I want to be fully alive in my humanness, welcomed and supported. I want to connect with another. I want to feel the touch of someone's skin and smell their scent linger in the air. Hear their laughter and share their tears. To lay naked in the light of day, unafraid of being seen. I want them to know the aging curves, the folds of worn-out skin that tell the tale of babies and battle scars. That these will not obscure the tender heart or the deep places of knowing or of being known. I want to know in the morning that I felt the waves and set loose the rush of my own hunger met by another. I want to share the morning sunrise with one who will hold up the sky when the day seems to be falling in time too quickly, taking the vitality and strength out of the wind's sails. And when it's asking too much of me, to have arms that hold me without needing me to be more than I can be in that moment of vulnerability. And when my too muchness or my not enoughness fills the room, I want someone who can call forth the strong woman in me, who must hold the hand of the inner child in me, without fixing or scolding or judging, simply to be present with me, to be reminded that life is risky and nothing is safe, and everything offers us possibilities when we find our way home. What do I want? To live fully embodied, to love another fiercely, to feel the ache of hunger for love, for joy, for life, to be wanted, to be held, to be alive, to feel aliveness pulsing through every sinew, every bone, every emotion, every breath. Yes, I want to live and feel my aliveness. Many months later, after writing that poem, in a surprise moment with my friend, awakening arrived. Recognition turned on like the light of a new day, bursting itself into the moment. In my wanting, in my longing, in my searching for love and aliveness, I suddenly realized it was here, already present inside, rich and full within me. No longer did I need to live a life of service in order to find my aliveness. I knew then that love and aliveness are met in connection. Connection with myself, with another, with spirit, and with life itself. This awakening brought me into a renewed, embodied experience of being alive. And from that place, I do my work. Thank you for listening.